I can feel it. My end is near. Not tomorrow, not next year. Sooner than I ever thought. And before I disappear from this world, I need to tell you something. Something no one told me before it was too late. If you're younger than me, even by a day, you need to hear this. Because when your time starts slipping away, it won't knock. It just leaves. And maybe, just maybe, this voice, my voice, can help you hold on to what really matters before you lose it. My name is Margaret Delaney, and I'm 92 years old. I've lived through wars, buried friends, lost my husband, and forgotten names I swore I'd never forget. My hands used to braid my daughter's hair. Now they shake just lifting a teacup. My world got smaller while the clocks kept ticking. I sit in this quiet house in a chair older than you, waiting for something I once feared, the end. But lately, I don't fear it anymore. I feel it. I smell it in the hallway. I see it in the mirror, hiding behind my eyes. Before it comes, I want to speak. Not as a teacher, not as a preacher, just as a woman who has watched everything change and still has one last truth left to share. It was just a Tuesday, nothing dramatic. The sky was pale, the tea was warm, and the clock on the wall made its usual hollow tick. But something was different. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It wasn't fear either. It was more like a whisper inside my chest. Soft, but certain. I remember standing by the window, watching the neighbor's boy play with a red ball. My knees felt heavier than usual, my breath shorter, but it was my heart that truly knew. Not racing, not breaking, just slowing down, like a bird folding its wings after a long flight. I sat down, not because I was tired, but because something told me I should. My fingers gripped the armrest a little tighter. My skin felt thinner, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a visitor in my own body. That was the moment. The moment I knew the clock wasn't just ticking, it was counting down. You see, when you're young, your body is loud. It shouts when it's hungry, dances when it's happy, aches when it's overworked. But at my age, the body doesn't shout anymore. It whispers, it hums beneath the surface. And if you don't learn how to listen, you miss it. You miss the moment it says, "It's time." I didn't cry. There was no panic, only a strange kind of stillness, like the air right before the first snow. I looked around my living room. The old lamp, the cracked photograph frame, the chair no one else sits in. Everything looked exactly the same, but it felt like I was looking at it from the other side of something, as if I had quietly crossed over from living to waiting. And no one else noticed. That's the cruel part about nearing the end. The world doesn't pause with you. The mail still arrives, the cat still wants to be fed, and the kettle still whistles as if nothing has changed. But inside, everything has. I made my tea, sat in my chair, and I whispered back to my body, "I hear you." Not out loud, no, just inside, quietly, respectfully. Because when your body tells you the end is near, it's not being cruel. It's being honest. And that honesty, it's the most intimate thing you'll ever feel. Not everyone gets it. Some people go fast, others deny it. But if you're lucky, and I do mean lucky, you get that one clear day, that moment when everything aligns and your body hands you the truth gently, like a letter left on the doorstep. I received mine that Tuesday morning. And since then, I've been living with a different kind of awareness, a softness, a goodbye stretched out over days. I don't know how many mornings I have left, but I remember that one. The one where the sunlight hit the curtains just right, and the house felt like it was holding its breath. That morning didn't come with sirens or pain or drama. It came with a whisper, a knowing, and I've carried it with me every day since. Because sometimes the body doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just needs you to finally listen. The forgetting didn't begin with names. No, it was smaller than that. It started with spoons. I'd open the drawer and stare, unsure of what I was looking for. Then it moved to words, simple ones I'd used 1,000 times. I remember once I stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding a lemon, unable to remember why. It wasn't alarming at first. I laughed it off, told myself it was normal. Age does that, I thought, but deep inside, a quiet discomfort settled in. A fear I wouldn't name. Then one day, I looked at a picture on the wall. My daughter, age 7, and her name didn't come right away. It came eventually, yes. But it had to be pulled from the back of my mind like a box from a dusty attic. That frightened me. Not because I didn't love her, not because I'd forgotten her, but because I felt something slipping, like trying to hold water in my hands and watching it fall through the cracks. That's the cruelty of it. You're still there. Still you. But the pieces begin to drift, like clouds breaking apart in slow motion. And yet I kept going. We always do. I made my tea, folded my laundry, fed the cat, but every day a little more fog crept in. Not enough to lose me, but enough to blur the edges. I started writing notes to myself, little reminders stuck to mirrors and cabinets. Don't boil the kettle dry. Call Ruth on Sunday. Your name is Margaret. I read that last one often, not because I forgot, but because I feared I might. Reading it was like anchoring myself, like whispering to the sea, I'm still here. The hardest part wasn't the forgetting, it was the hiding. Pretending I hadn't paused mid-sentence, laughing off my confusion, watching people's eyes soften with pity when I stumbled over a word. That look cuts deeper than any pain, because it says, she's fading. And maybe I was. But inside, I still felt sharp, still felt present. It's just that my memory, once so reliable, now walked with a limp. There was a day, I remember it clearly, when my granddaughter ran to hug me and shouted, "Hi, Grandma!" And I froze. Not because I didn't know her, but because for a terrifying second, I couldn't remember who she reminded me of. That second passed. Her scent brought it all back. But I sat with that fear long after she ran off. I sat with it until the sun dipped and the shadows grew long, thinking, what happens when the scent doesn't help anymore? They say memory is who we are. If that's true, then I've been losing bits of myself quietly, without ceremony. But I've also discovered something else, that love doesn't forget. Even when the names fade, the feeling stays. I may forget the word lemon, but I remember the warmth of my husband's hand. I may lose a date, but I remember the sound of my baby crying at 3 a.m. Memory changes, but it doesn't erase everything. Some things are stitched too deep into the soul to ever be undone. There was a time when I hated silence, when the house was full of voices, footsteps, slammed doors, pots clattering in the kitchen. I used to dream of quiet, just a moment of stillness, a breath. But now the silence is all I have. And it's not peaceful like I imagined. It's loud in a different way. It echoes. It speaks back. It reminds me over and over of what used to be. You see, silence isn't empty. It's filled with the sounds that are no longer there. In the morning when I sit with my tea, the house is so quiet I can hear the walls settle. The wood creaks in ways I never noticed before. Even the refrigerator hum feels intrusive. And yet, beneath that, there's a deeper silence, one that stretches through time. It's the silence of not hearing my husband cough as he always did before he rose. The silence of no spoons clinking as I served cereal to my daughter. The silence of no one calling Mom from down the hall. That's the silence I live in now. And sometimes, it's unbearable. People don't talk about this part of aging, the part where absence becomes a presence, where the lack of sound feels like someone standing behind you, breathing quietly, reminding you of everything you've lost. I talk to myself now, just to break the air. I hum when I fold laundry. I read aloud from books I can barely finish. Not because I'm losing my mind, not yet, but because I want the sound of a voice to exist in these rooms again, even if it's only mine. But there's something else too, a different kind of sound. When I'm very still, I hear my memories. They come not as pictures, but as echoes. My son laughing as he chased the dog through the hallway. My husband's keys dropping in the bowl by the door. The way my sister used to whistle while brushing her hair. These aren't memories I summon. They come on their own, wrapped in silence, slipping through the quiet like wind under the door. And when they come, I stop. I listen, because they're all I have now. There are nights I lie awake, and the silence grows so thick, I feel it pressing on my chest. It asks questions I don't want to answer. It reminds me of the days ahead, how few they are, how quiet they'll be. But still, I don't run from it. I sit with it. I've made peace with silence, not because I chose to, but because there's no one left to fill it. And in that space, in that vast, aching quiet, I've learned something. That silence is not the enemy. It's a mirror. And when I sit with it long enough, it shows me who I've become. Not the mother, not the wife, not the neighbor or friend. Just Margaret. Just a woman at the end of a long story, listening to the last pages turn. I still remember the last time I laughed without pain. Not just a polite chuckle or a soft smile, but a real, deep belly laugh. The kind that makes your ribs ache and your eyes water. It came out of nowhere. My granddaughter had made some silly face, trying to feed the dog a spoonful of yogurt, and something about it cracked me open. I laughed so hard I nearly fell from my chair. For a moment, I wasn't 92. I wasn't alone. I wasn't waiting for the end. I was just a woman in a warm room, surrounded by life. But as the laughter died down, something else surfaced. A sharp pull in my side, a pinch behind my ribs. It faded quickly, but it left a message. Joy doesn't come free anymore. My body, once the container for all my laughter, has grown thin, brittle. It charges me for every burst of energy, every moment of excitement, even the good ones. It's a strange thing to learn, that joy too can cost you pain. After that day, I began noticing how often I held myself back. I'd smile, yes. I'd nod, offer kind words, even hum with happiness. But to laugh? Really laugh? I became careful. I feared the tug, the sudden cramp, the ache in my chest that followed. So I started filtering my joy, wrapping it in caution like fine china. Not because I didn't want to feel it, but because I couldn't afford it in the same way anymore. It's a quiet grief, that kind. Not the kind people see. You can't explain to your daughter that you didn't laugh at her joke because you were afraid it might hurt. You just smile instead. You let joy pass through the room without fully touching it. And over time, it becomes a habit, a defense. You become a spectator to your own happiness. I don't think people understand how physical aging steals from you in such subtle ways. It doesn't just take your speed or your memory. It takes your ease, your spontaneity. It turns joy into something you have to plan for, measure, ration like sugar in wartime. I never imagined I'd have to weigh the cost of laughter. And yet, in all that, there's a strange sweetness. Because when I do laugh now, truly, deeply, I cherish it more. I feel it in every part of me, like the last warmth of the sun on your skin before winter takes over. I don't laugh as often, but when I do, it's real. It comes with tears and aching bones and a shaking breath, and it feels sacred. So if you're young and laughter comes easy to you, don't waste it. Don't hold it in. Let yourself laugh until you gasp for air, until you fall over, until your stomach hurts from joy, not age. Because one day, you might find that even laughter becomes a memory. And when it does, you'll wish you had used every single one you had while it still came without pain. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, folding a faded nightgown, when it hit me. The world outside no longer felt real. not in a dramatic, dreamlike way, but in a slow, unsettling drift. The news on television felt like it belonged to someone else's planet. The phone calls, the weather reports, even the laughter of children passing by my window. They all seemed like echoes from a life I used to belong to. And that's when I realized my memories had become safer than my reality. It didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, like the soft erosion of a cliff by the sea. At first, I found comfort in remembering. A song from the 60s would play, and I'd smile. The scent of cinnamon would bring me back to baking pies with my mother, but eventually, I started choosing memory over presence. Instead of stepping out into the cold morning air, I'd sit and remember my husband zipping up my coat. Instead of making lunch, I'd think about the grilled cheese he once burned and how we laughed for an hour afterward. I wasn't escaping. I was surviving. Because this present world, with its blinking phones and unfamiliar slang and a body that hurts in too many places, it's hard and it's lonely. In my memories, I'm surrounded. I'm needed. I'm alive in ways I no longer feel now. I know it sounds sad, but to me, it became a kind of comfort, a refuge. The past, with all its imperfections, is where I remember who I was when I was whole. Sometimes I sit with an old photo album on my lap, not even looking at the pictures, just touching the pages. My fingers remember what my mind sometimes forgets. The texture of a childhood quilt, the weight of a baby in my arms, the softness of his voice saying, "You look tired, Mags." These things are not just memories. They are anchors, and in a life that feels increasingly unmoored, I hold on to them like lifelines. But I also know the danger. Living too much in memory can steal the little you have left of the now. I've missed moments, small ones, but real. The way the sunlight hit the floor one afternoon, the sound of rain tapping on the window. A phone call I let ring too long, unsure if I had the energy to talk. These present things, they matter too. And I try. I do. But my heart has one foot in yesterday, and it's hard to drag it forward. So I balance best I can. I let myself remember, but I light a candle in the present. I make the tea. I pet the cat. I open the curtain. I try to notice what is still here, even as I long for what's gone. Because maybe the truth is this. The past holds my soul, but the present still holds my breath. And until that breath runs out, I owe it a little attention. Even if it hurts, even if it's quieter than it used to be. Because one day, someone will remember me, and I want there to be something here worth remembering. There's a small wooden box on the shelf above my fireplace. Most people wouldn't notice it. It's plain, barely the size of a loaf of bread, with a faded brass hinge and no label. But to me, it holds everything. I don't mean valuable things, not in the way people think of value. No jewelry, no money, no old letters from someone famous, just fragments. Tiny objects that together tell the story of a life. Inside is a single baby sock, so worn the blue thread is nearly white. It belonged to my son. He outgrew it in weeks, but I never threw it away. There's also a dried flower, a daisy from the day my husband and I walked by the lake, and he tucked it behind my ear, calling me his wild thing. There's a church bulletin from the last service my mother attended before she passed, and a birthday candle I never lit, from the year I turned 70 and realized I didn't want to celebrate without him. Some days, I take the box down and open it slowly, as if it might crumble in my hands. I touch each item like it's sacred, because it is. These aren't just things, they are witnesses. They saw me love, grieve, grow, and survive. They are proof that I existed fully, even if no one else remembers the details. And now, as the end creeps closer, I find myself drawn to these objects more than ever. They don't talk, but they speak. They don't breathe, but they carry breath. There's something strange about physical things when you're older. They seem to gain weight. Not in pounds, but in meaning. The teacup with the crack down the side isn't just a cup. It's every conversation I ever had with my sister. The scarf with the hole in it is from the walk we took the day after my father died. My house is filled with these quiet ghosts, and they keep me company better than most people can now. Sometimes I wonder what will happen to the box when I'm gone. Will someone open it? Will they understand what these scraps meant to me? Or will it end up in a donation bin, mistaken for clutter, swept away like dust? That thought used to haunt me. But now, I think maybe it's okay. Maybe the purpose of these things wasn't to be understood by others, but to keep me steady in my final chapters. Still, if someone does open it, someday years from now, I hope they'll feel something, even if they don't know what. I hope they'll hold that baby sock and sense the love that filled it. I hope they'll run their fingers along the dried daisy and smile, just for a second, not knowing why. Because that's the quiet magic of the things we leave behind. They carry echoes. They hum with the warmth of hands long gone. And in a world where everything moves too fast and too loud, maybe that little wooden box will remind someone to slow down, to feel, to remember that even the smallest things can hold a whole life. It was a Tuesday, I think. The days blur together now. But I remember the light, soft, golden, slipping through the kitchen window like it used to when I was young. I had just finished warming some soup when there was a knock on the door. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to startle me out of thought. When I opened it, there she was, my niece, Anna. I hadn't seen her in months. She was holding flowers, her smile tight around the edges, like someone bracing for something they couldn't say aloud. She stayed for an hour, maybe 2. We talked, or rather she talked, filling the space with stories about her children, her work, the neighbor's dog. I nodded, laughed when it felt right, and kept watching her hands, how they trembled slightly when she reached for her tea, how she looked at me when she thought I wasn't looking. There was a sorrow in her eyes she couldn't disguise, and I knew, without her saying it, why she was really there. It wasn't just a visit. It was a goodbye. She didn't say it, of course. People rarely do. Goodbyes this close to the end aren't dramatic, like in movies. They're quieter. They come in the form of longer hugs, hands held a little tighter, eyes that linger just a second too long. They come with the hesitation at the door, the pause before stepping away, the soft, take care that carries more weight than it used to. When she left, I sat in my chair, holding the mug she used, still warm. I didn't cry. I just stared at the space where she'd been, memorizing it, the way her hair fell over her shoulder, the scent she left behind, the sound of her laughter still dancing faintly in the air. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. Because even though she didn't say it, I knew she was preparing herself for my absence. I've had a few visits like that over the years, each one quieter than the last. Friends from church who bring banana bread and stories from the town. My neighbor who checks on the garden but doesn't look me in the eye anymore. Even the postman who used to chat for 5 minutes now just nods with a softness I understand too well. They all feel it. They all sense the shift. I've become a sunset, not quite gone, but fading, and everyone's watching just a little longer before the light disappears. And while it hurts in a deep, quiet place inside me, it also fills me with something else. Gratitude. Because to be visited like that, to be held in someone's heart before you're gone, is a kind of love many don't get. They bring their presence as an offering. They may not say the words, but I hear them anyway. I remember you. I see you. I won't forget. That is the most precious gift at the end. Not flowers, not sympathy cards, but the quiet, unspoken visits that say goodbye without ever saying it out loud. And I carry each one like a pressed flower between the pages of this final chapter. There are things I've done in this life that I'll never confess out loud, not because they were terrible, but because they were mine, quiet mistakes made in moments of weakness or pride or simple blindness. We all have them, tucked away in the corners of memory where the light doesn't quite reach. Mine lives in the space between two heartbeats. A choice I made when I thought I still had time to make it right. And now, as the clock ticks a little louder each night, I know I won't have the chance. It wasn't dramatic. That's what makes it so heavy. It was a conversation I avoided, a letter I never wrote, a door I didn't open when someone knocked, needing something I didn't know how to give. I see their face sometimes, not angry, not sad, just waiting. That's the worst part. Not the thing itself, but knowing that silence, that inaction, became a wound, one I can no longer mend. And yet, here I sit, breathing, remembering, holding on to this truth like a stone in my pocket. It's not about guilt. I've outlived the age of self-punishment. It's about understanding, about wishing someone had told me sooner that time isn't infinite, that not all doors open again, and that some people only knock once. If I could go back, I wouldn't ask for more years, just for one single day. The day I didn't act. I'd choose differently. You might be thinking this sounds like regret. Maybe it is, but it's the kind that doesn't scream. It whispers at night, when the house is still. It shows up in the taste of cold tea, in the pages of half-finished letters. It doesn't ask for forgiveness. It simply reminds you that you're human, that we all let moments slip away, and that if you're lucky enough to still have time, you should treat it like the fragile, miraculous thing it is. There's someone out there, I believe, who still wonders why I didn't show up, who carries my absence in a quiet place I'll never reach. If I could speak to them now, I'd say, it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I thought I had more tomorrows, and that more than anything is the lesson I want to leave behind. Don't wait. Don't assume you'll get another chance. If there's a call you've been meaning to make, a wound you've left untended, a truth you've buried beneath fear, speak it. Soften. Show up. Not for them, but for the version of yourself who, one day, will sit in a quiet room with only memory for company. Because in the end, it's not the big failures that echo the loudest. It's the moments when love asked for a hand, and we were too proud, too busy, or too scared to reach out. Don't let that be your story. I wish someone had told me this sooner. Maybe now I'm telling you. It's a strange thing, watching the world carry on without you. The streets still buzz, the shops still open, the mail keeps arriving, full of offers and appointments I no longer need. I sit by the window most mornings, watching people rush past, heads down, eyes on their phones, lives overflowing with things to do, places to be. And I wonder if they feel it, even a little, the way time slips through fingers that never stop moving. I used to be one of them. I had a calendar so full I had to color-code it. I was always planning the next thing, birthdays, holidays, dentist appointments, new curtains for the living room. There was always something coming. Always a reason to think, later. Later I'll rest. Later I'll visit. Later I'll say what needs saying. But now, later is a place I can't reach anymore. It's behind me. And all that rushing I did, it feels like it belonged to someone else. The world didn't pause when I slowed down. That was the hardest part. When I first began to feel weak, the kind of weakness that sleep doesn't cure, I thought people would notice. I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would ask, "Are you okay?" But they didn't. Not because they didn't care, but because they were busy, caught in the current. And I had stepped out of the river. There's an ache that comes with realizing you are no longer needed, no longer asked for. Your name doesn't come up unless someone's telling a story from the past. Your phone rings less. Holidays are quieter. People don't ask for your opinion like they used to. You become a background character in the lives you helped build. And yet, you're still here, still feeling everything, still hoping to matter, even in small, quiet ways. Some days I try to insert myself. I comment on photos I don't fully understand. I watch videos just to feel like I'm part of something. But most days, I simply watch. And that's where the loneliness settles in. Not because I'm alone, but because the rhythm of the world has changed, and I no longer know the steps. But there is beauty, too, in stepping back. I see things others don't. The way a tree leans into the wind. The quiet kindness of a stranger helping someone cross the street. The joy in a child's laugh as they chase a balloon down the sidewalk. I've slowed down enough to see what the fast world misses. And perhaps that's my role now. To witness, to hold the stillness, to carry the soft truths others are too hurried to notice. So if you're reading this or hearing my voice, I want you to pause. Just for a moment. Breathe. Look around. See the people you pass without noticing. One day, you might be sitting in this same chair, watching the world move on. And if that day comes, I hope someone sees you. I hope someone slows down long enough to say, "You're still here, and that still matters." It began with a drawer. I opened it one morning to reach for a spoon, and instead of just grabbing what I needed, I stood there, staring. Not because I forgot what I was looking for, but because something in me whispered, "You won't need all of this much longer." That thought didn't come with fear. It came with stillness, a clarity I can't explain. And that was the moment I began preparing my home for my absence. I started small, one shelf at a time. I gave away coats I no longer wore, shoes I hadn't touched in years. I sorted through drawers filled with pens that didn't work and receipts from a time when groceries didn't cost a fortune. It was quiet work, intimate, like tidying up after a long visit, except I was the one preparing to leave. Not in a hurry, not panicked, just gently, with care, like someone cleaning up before closing a book. Some people say it's morbid, this kind of preparing. But I disagree. To me, it felt respectful. A way to honor the space that held my life. I didn't want someone else to come in later and have to guess what mattered and what didn't. I wanted to leave a kind house behind, one that didn't carry the burden of my unfinished business. I labeled boxes, wrote little notes. These dishes were my mother's. Photographs, please keep or share. I put my wedding ring in a velvet pouch with a letter no one has read yet. Maybe they'll cry when they find it. Maybe they won't. That part isn't mine to carry. My job is only to leave what's true and light enough for someone else to hold. What surprised me most was how emotional it became. Not in sadness, but in gratitude. Touching old scarves, reading forgotten postcards, finding a music box I hadn't heard in decades, all of it reminded me that I really lived. That I made a home, not just a house. That the people I loved were real and here, and that they mattered. Even if everything eventually turns to dust, there's something holy in the act of remembering. And yet, there were also things I let go. Journals half filled with thoughts I no longer recognize. Books I never finished. Clothes I kept hoping I'd wear again. Those things I gave up freely. It felt like permission. To unclench. To stop pretending I was still becoming someone new. I'm not. I've become who I am. And now I'm making room for the leaving. Every drawer I close, every box I seal is a small act of peace. Not giving up, but preparing. Like turning off the lights before bed. Like locking the door gently behind you. There is dignity in this. There is love. And I hope when they come into this house someday, they feel it. Not sorrow, not weight, but warmth. The echo of someone who lived here fully and left with grace. There's something I've been carrying for years, a piece of advice, quiet and heavy, that I never had the courage to speak aloud. Not because it was too painful or too complicated, but because it felt like no one wanted to hear it. People prefer cheerful stories, hopeful endings, easy truths, and this one, it isn't easy. It's the kind of wisdom that arrives too late for you, but just in time for someone else. And so, before I go, I'll say it now. Here it is. Don't wait to become yourself. That might sound vague, maybe even poetic, but it's the most honest thing I've ever known. I spent so many years being who people needed me to be, a good daughter, a supportive wife, a mother who gave more than she had, a neighbor who never said no, a friend who always smiled. Somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself what I actually wanted, what I feared, what I loved, what made me, me. It's not that I regret the life I lived. I loved, I served, I built a family. But I realize now, in these last quiet seasons, that I never gave myself permission to fully exist outside of others. And when everyone else left, when the house grew still and the mirror showed only my face, aged and softened by time, I didn't quite know who I was looking at. So I ask you gently, are you living for yourself or through others? Are your choices truly yours? Do you allow yourself to want things? To be loud sometimes? To rest without guilt? To cry in front of people who expect you to be strong? Because if not, please, don't wait until you're sitting in a room alone with your hands folded in your lap, wondering what it would have felt like to be fully, wildly, unapologetically you. Be kind, yes. Be loving, be dependable, but also be real. Be honest. Say no when your soul aches. Say yes to things that scare you a little. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Your life is not a waiting room for someone else's dreams. It's yours. It always has been. I didn't say these words to my daughter when she was young. I watched her carry the same weight I did, of being enough for everyone but herself. I see it in her eyes still, that quiet exhaustion. I wish I had told her this sooner. I wish I had shown her by example. But maybe now, even now, these words can reach someone. So I leave you with this truth, from an old woman sitting at the edge of her final page. The world will keep spinning whether you're silent or not. So speak, live, become. Don't let the years pass you by while you're still waiting for permission to be who you are. It's yours. Take it before it's too late. There's a weight in my chest tonight. Not pain, not fear, just a quiet urgency. Like the last few embers of a fire trying to stay lit before the wind comes. And I know, without question, that I'm nearing the end. Not metaphorically, not in some poetic sense. I mean truly, physically, spiritually, nearing. It's not frightening anymore. It's peaceful, in a strange way. But before I go, there's one last thing I need to say. One last truth I've carried in my bones, waiting for the right moment. Maybe this is it. Please, don't make the same mistake I made. I don't mean a single act or a decision you can point to. I mean the slow, quiet mistake of living small, of holding your breath through the moments that begged you to exhale, of biting your tongue when your heart wanted to shout, of walking away from love because it scared you, of choosing safety over wonder, routine over risk, silence over song. I lived a good life, a kind life, but I played it safe. I stayed in the lines. I followed the rules written by people who were just as scared as I was, and for that, I missed some of the wildness that was mine to taste. The tears that come from chasing something impossible, the heartbreak of loving with everything you have, the pride of failing and standing up anyway. You think you have time. That's the biggest lie of all. You think you can call them tomorrow, tell them how you feel next week, take the trip when the kids are grown. But the truth is, time doesn't wait. It doesn't knock. It doesn't ask if you're ready. One day, you just wake up and your hands don't grip like they used to. Your legs forget how to run. The names fade. The chances disappear. So if there's anything left unsaid, say it. If there's someone you miss, call them. If your heart is aching to do something foolish and beautiful, do it. Don't let life pass in whispers and almosts. Be bold, be clumsy, be loud. Let them remember your laugh, your fire, the way your eyes lit up when you talked about what you loved. I'm not afraid to go, but I'm afraid that someone out there will hear this too late, that they'll listen after their own ending has begun. So I'm speaking now, as clearly as I can, from the edge of this soft, silent goodbye. You are still here. You still have time. Use it. Waste it on wonder. Spend it on love. Burn it on dreams. Please, don't wait for the end to finally live. And when my voice fades, when this message becomes only words on a screen or a memory in your ears, let it echo. Let it remind you that somewhere a woman named Margaret lived, loved, and finally found the courage to speak. And she left these words not to be remembered, but to help you remember yourself. If these words touched something in you, stay. Breathe with me. Let's not run from time, but walk with it, slowly, gently. If this voice reminded you of someone you've lost or someone you still have, honor that. Like this video if it held you for a while. And if you feel there's more to hear, more to feel, subscribe. We still have stories to tell, even in silence.